My parents won't help pay for my son's medical bills, who has passed away, while they secretly helped my brother. But now things are turning bad for them, and they deserve it. I was just 10 years old when my parents, Will and Sully, started leaving my younger brother William at home with me. We didn't have much, and they worked all day to make a living. Every day they would leave home at 6 in the morning, tell me what they had prepared for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and give me instructions on taking care of my brother. Each night they returned home at 10, sat down to eat something cold, and listened to my report on how the day had gone. When I turned 12, they stopped preparing lunch and dinner before leaving for work. By 14, I was responsible for cooking all the meals, washing clothes, and cleaning the house, all while caring for William. I loved my parents and understood that they had to work. Taking care of William wasn't a burden because he was my younger brother, but those responsibilities stole my childhood. They also took away my chance to have friends. Whenever my classmates invited me out, there was always some chore waiting for me at home. Eventually, they stopped inviting me. It was especially hard in high school. By then, my parents sat me down and told me it was time to get a job to help with the household expenses and bills. They reminded me of the many sacrifices they had made to pay for my education up to that point and said it was time for me to lighten their load. As I said, I loved my parents and understood their financial situation. I was happy to help. However, whatever social life I had disappeared completely. The little free time I had left was spent studying to keep up academically. I worked hard to earn a college scholarship and couldn't afford to slow down. Fortunately, my efforts paid off, and I went to college on a full scholarship. Even then, my parents expected me to send them money. I had to work not just to pay my own bills but also to help with theirs. My college experience was essentially a repeat of high school: no friends, odd schedules, and sleepless nights. By the time I graduated, I didn't have any real friends. Upon leaving college, my first resolution was to make friends, true friends. By another stroke of luck, I landed a job immediately after graduation, and it wasn't a waitress job. My parents were thrilled because it meant I could send them more money. I was thrilled because I no longer had to spend long hours standing. True to my resolution, when my coworkers invited me out, I practically screamed, yes. It was during those first after-work outings that I met my husband Alex. He wasn't exactly a coworker, but rather a friend of one of them. Still, he was the easiest person to talk to and accepted my reserved nature. After a few after-work outings, Alex finally asked me out on a date. 6 months into dating, he proposed to me, and I said yes. My parents argued that it was too soon, but I had never been more sure about anything in my life. Alex was my first and only love, and I couldn't wait to spend the rest of my life with him. It was the best decision I ever made. On a morning in April 6 years ago, I married the love of my life in front of friends and family. Even though I was starting my own family, my parents still expected the monthly payments I had always sent them. Fortunately, Alex was understanding and didn't complain. However, when they began hinting that they also expected Alex to send them money, I drew the line. It was one thing for them to expect me to send them money until the day I died, but to expect the same from Alex, who carried most of our family's financial burdens, was not only absurd but completely selfish. And what about William? At his age, I had been working as a waitress, doing household chores, babysitting, and studying, all at the same time. When I pointed this out to my parents, they said, well, the reason you had to work so hard was so that William wouldn't have to. I reminded my parents that the reason they pushed me to work so young was to ease their burden. If they had 2 children, that responsibility should have fallen on both of us. They then proceeded to call me a bad sister. For a while, I stopped talking to them, and of course, stopped sending them money. If it weren't for Alex, we might have continued ignoring each other, even after the birth of my son, Charlie. He told me to forgive them, and reminded me they were still my parents. 10 months after the argument, I gave birth to my son, Charlie. I looked at his beautiful face once and knew I had to make some changes. The first change was the amount of money I sent my parents. After Charlie was born, I reduced the money I sent them each month by 30%. Charlie was my future, and I couldn't sabotage it for my parents. Of course, my decision didn't sit well with them. They tried to argue, but it was a losing battle, and they knew it. Little did I know that 5 years later, I would be laid off. The company I worked for was downsizing. It was right after the pandemic, and the country's economy wasn't what it used to be. Many companies were cutting staff, making it difficult to find a new job. Even after months of searching, Alex suggested I become a stay-at-home mom, and I agreed. Fortunately, when I told my parents there would be no more monthly checks from me, they didn't complain, though they were very unhappy. Even though one source of income disappeared, Alex, Charlie, and I remained happy. More than ever, I had everything I needed right in my arms, the 2 men who owned my heart. Life was good until 2 months ago when my world fell apart. Charlie started feeling weak. He always seemed out of breath and sometimes complained that his heart was beating too fast. Alex and I told him to rest more and prevented him from playing too much. Then, one day, we got a call from his school saying he had fainted. We rushed to the hospital, worried, and the doctor diagnosed him with a heart rhythm disorder called Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome. From the moment I heard the name, I didn't like it. The doctor said surgery was the only way to treat it. When he mentioned the cost of the surgery, I broke down in tears. Alex asked if there was any medication Charlie could take until we raised the money for the surgery. The doctor gave us a prescription but warned that Charlie needed the surgery as soon as possible. Since then, Alex and I have been doing everything we can to raise the money. I have drained my savings, including the fund I had started for Charlie's college education. I wanted to start looking for a job, but Alex insisted I focus on taking care of Charlie. Meanwhile, the bills kept piling up: groceries, household needs, and the cost of Charlie's medications. Alex's family has been incredibly supportive. Sometimes they fill our house with groceries or help take care of Charlie. They even paid for half of Charlie's medications last month. And then there's my own family. I haven't heard from William in a long time since he went to college somewhere up north. When I told my parents about Charlie's diagnosis, they gave empty platitudes. Not once have they called to check on us or asked how they could help. Charlie is their grandson, but they treated the news as if he were the child of an acquaintance. Their insensitivity disgusted me, and I vowed not to contact them again. But then, Charlie got worse yesterday. Now he needs that surgery more than ever. I am thinking of contacting my parents just to ask them for money. What we have raised is still far from the amount we need. Alex doubts they will help, and honestly, I feel the same. But I have to try. I can't afford to lose my little one. Update 1. I'm here with an update. I want to start by thanking everyone for the overwhelming support and advice during this incredibly difficult time. Despite all your kind words and suggestions, my news is devastating. I lost my little one. The light and joy of my life are gone, and I'm struggling to accept this unbearable loss. It's so hard to organize my thoughts to tell you everything that has happened, but I'll do my best because I want to share this with you. As many of you advised, I reached out to my parents to ask for help. I had hoped that despite our complicated past, they would put aside our differences and offer support. But as is often the case, reality had other plans. At first, my parents delayed their response, telling me they needed time to think. They claimed they were barely getting by since they stopped receiving money from a certain someone. I didn't bother replying to their messages. I knew they had no intention of helping us. Even if they had, their half-hearted and conditional offer would have arrived too late. 2 days after asking them for help, my parents sent a text reiterating their inability to provide financial support. They wrote a hollow line about wishing they could help but said they didn't have any money available. I deleted the message without bothering to reply. If I could have torn it into pieces, I would have. Looking back, I realize I should have known better than to expect anything from my parents. They've never been there for me when I needed them, and I shouldn't have expected them to change now. But as a desperate mother trying to save her child, I clung to the hope that they would finally step up and be the parents they should have been from the start. Now, as I sit here trying to come to terms with losing my child, I'm left to pick up the pieces of my shattered heart. I'm grateful for the love and support of my husband Alex, who has been my rock throughout this terrible experience. Even when I told him I had contacted my parents behind his back, he didn't throw it in my face or say, "I told you so." Instead, he simply held me and said how sorry he was. We feel so lost right now, but I know that someday, somehow, things will be okay, though that day feels so far away. For now, we're just holding each other as tightly as we can. Update 2. I'm back with another update. I want to begin by thanking everyone for your heartfelt condolences. Your messages of comfort haven't stopped coming since Charlie went to a better place. And I have to say, they mean the world to me. Charlie was everything to us. This morning, Alex and I decided to have him cremated. While most of his ashes were buried in the backyard of Alex's parents' house, we kept a small portion with us. It's a small comfort, but having a part of him close makes us feel like he's still here, watching over us. You won't believe who showed up at the funeral, my parents. I'm still trying to process it. I didn't invite them or send them any information about the event, but somehow they found out and had the audacity to show up. Dressed in black, they pretended to mourn as if they truly cared. It was as though they thought they could walk in and act the part of loving grandparents. I was furious. I wanted to confront them, to tell them how hurtful and hypocritical it was for them to be there now. How dare they show up and pretend to care about my son when they made it clear they didn't want to help when we needed it most? But Alex stopped me. He reminded me that Charlie deserved to be laid to rest in peace and that my parents' presence wasn't worth ruining that moment. So I bit my tongue and walked away. I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of thinking they could still get to me. However, when they dared to approach us to offer their condolences, I turned my back on them and walked away, taking Alex with me. I'm done with them. When I needed them, they chose not to be there for me. And now, when it's too late, they want to pretend they care? No, I don't think so. To me, they are no longer my parents. They're just two people who share DNA with me. I will never be able to forgive them for what they did, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with acknowledging that our relationship is beyond repair. I'm okay with moving on and focusing on the people who truly care about me and my family. As painful as my parents' betrayal was, William's absence hurt even more. My younger brother didn't even bother to attend the funeral, not a call, not a message. I sent him countless messages when Charlie was sick, and even informed him about the funeral, but he couldn't be bothered to show up or even send a card. Losing Charlie made one thing painfully clear. The people I called family have never seen me the same way I saw them. And that's my fault for expecting so much from them. Update 3. Honestly, I didn't think I'd be back so soon, but I just made a disturbing discovery, and I'm struggling to process it. In my post 3 months ago, I mentioned how I hadn't heard from my brother William in a long time, and how his absence and lack of communication hurt even more than my parents' lack of help. In my mind, I imagined he was somewhere, too busy with work or friends or something like that. Never in a million years did I imagine the truth, that he was hiding, scamming our parents to fund his addiction. Yesterday afternoon, I went to the mall to get out of the house and clear my mind. That's when I ran into one of William's school friends, Bob. He was happy to see me, and we started catching up on the years we'd lost contact. He didn't know about Charlie, and honestly, it was a relief to talk to someone who didn't look at me with pity or constantly ask how I was doing. At some point in the conversation, Bob asked about my parents, specifically if they had found a new place to live. I asked him what he meant. As far as I knew, my parents were still living in the house where they raised William and me. Bob suddenly became uncomfortable and said it wasn't his place to talk about it. That's when I got worried. I refused to let him leave without telling me what he knew. Finally, he gave in and suggested we discuss it over coffee. At the cafe, Bob opened up. He told me how he and William started using drugs in college. Both dropped out before the second semester of their final year and moved in together. When they ran out of money, they sold their clothes, shoes, and anything else they could get their hands on. But even that wasn't enough to support their addiction. That's when William came up with an idea. He convinced a friend to clean up and take some photos. Then, William sent those photos to my parents, along with a letter claiming he had met the love of his life in college and had gotten married after graduation. He invented a story about moving in with his wife's parents to take care of them due to their poor health. He told my parents that life was hard and that he needed their financial support, and my parents believed every word. For more than 4 years, they sent William money every month, funding a fake family. Meanwhile, when I turned to them for help to save my own family, my sick son, they said they didn't have the funds to help me. But that's not even the worst part. William decided the money my parents were sending wasn't enough, so he forged my father's signature and sold their house. Yes, you read that right, he sold their house. My parents have been living, sleeping, going out, and coming back to a house that isn't even theirs anymore. It's only a matter of time before the new owner comes to claim it. When I told Alex, he was shocked and speechless. Honestly, I'm still struggling to process it myself. When I needed my parents to help my son, they turned their backs on me without hesitation. Yet they didn't think twice about funding a family they never even met. And now, they don't even know they've lost their home. So that's what I've discovered, and that's why I'm sharing it here. Because it's too much. Should I tell my parents, or let them find out on their own? Update 4. Thank you for all the advice and support regarding what I should do with the information Bob shared about William. To be honest, even with your many suggestions, I still couldn't make a decision until I talked to Alex about it. My dilemma came from the fact that the more I thought about the two options I was considering, letting my parents suffer in ignorance or rubbing it in their faces that they'd been duped by their golden child, the more I felt like I was acting out of revenge. And while I know I have every right to feel that way, I don't want to be consumed by anger. I've seen what that does to people, and it's something I want to avoid. When I told Alex about my dilemma, he said he understood my feelings. He agreed that both options seemed vengeful on the surface, but reminded me that I'd been deeply wronged. He pointed out that my parents deserved to be confronted about their actions because, after everything I sacrificed for William and for them, they weren't willing to reciprocate when I needed them most. Alex said something that really stuck with me. Maybe we'll never know if the money they could have sent would have saved Charlie. But what we do know is that they deliberately turned their backs on our family. They chose not to help at all. He told me that sharing what I discovered from Bob and confronting my parents about their injustice wasn't being vengeful. It was simply seeking justice. Then he added that leaving them in ignorance to face the humiliation of discovering their golden child had sold their house might seem vengeful, but it would be a fitting consequence for their behavior. He even said they deserved something 10 times worse than that. When he said that, I felt a blurry line suddenly become clear. I wasn't seeking revenge. I was standing up for what was right. This morning I went to my parents' house. I brought up William and the family they claim he has but never introduced to me. I asked why they refused to help Charlie when they had no problem financing William's supposed family, a family they didn't even know. Do you know what they said? That William's family was above mine and that I had money, the money I'd saved, by no longer sending it to them. I saw red. I was shaking with so much anger that I knew if I didn't leave, I might do something I'd regret, something that might physically harm them. The fact that I even hesitated about confronting them, given how cold they are, seemed absurd to me at that moment. Alex was right. They deserve something 10 times worse than what I'd planned for them. They deserve to fail and fail miserably. But before that happens, I want them to get a taste of their own medicine. Update 5. Today has been an intense day. Today was my mother's birthday. No, scratch that. The woman doesn't deserve to be called my mother. Let me rephrase. Today was Sully's birthday. For as long as I can remember, she's always celebrated her birthday the same way. She invites all the family members in town to an all-family gathering with a dramatic presentation of gifts, where the giver must give a short speech. Even this year, she didn't disappoint. I received the invitation card in the mail 2 days after confronting them about William's fake family. It invited Alex and me to the celebration. This morning I put on a cute black dress and Alex put on his suit. I'd already told him what I planned to do and my sweet husband was fully on board. Of course, I also told him about the ridiculous response Sully and Will gave. When we arrived, most of the family members were surprised to see us, given that we're still mourning. We endured the awkward small talk until it was time to present gifts to the so-called honoree. When it was our turn, I handed them our gift, a picture of the house where William had been living since dropping out of college. It also included documents and details of his grand plan to deceive Sully and Will into believing he had a family. It also outlined the sale of the very house we were in. I didn't hold back. I made sure everyone knew about their beloved William, who had been living a lie and scamming his own parents for years. I told the story of my son Charlie and how they turned their backs on me when I needed the money, all to pay for my brother's addiction. When I finished, Alex stepped forward. He told them clearly that he didn't want to see them near us, that we were done with them. He told them they could run with their favorite son and deal with the consequences of the truth. Will and Sully broke down in tears, but the time for compassion had long passed. Not only had we shown everyone who they really were, but they had also discovered who their son was. If you're wondering how I felt good. It felt good to confront them and expose their hypocrisy. It felt good to stand up for myself and my family, and it felt good to walk away, knowing I was leaving that toxicity behind. Edit. Since I've been writing this update, I've received several messages, some from my parents asking us to meet and talk, though I haven't responded. I think we've said everything we needed to say to each other. I've blocked them and moved on. I've also received messages from family members, but so far all of them have sent messages saying they're so sorry for my loss and that my parents have been idiots. It feels good to have people on your side. Update 6. For those wondering what happened with my parents in the house, here's the update. I haven't talked to them, but it's not hard to find out everything that has happened since my parents' story has become the gossip of the family. They didn't lose the house because obviously the signature was forged, and the sale my brother arranged wasn't legal. However, my brother did get into trouble for that. But not with my parents because they didn't want to sue him or press charges since he's their special son. Still, he had to enter a rehab program paid for by my parents. And yes, I call them parents to make reading this easier, as some people mentioned in my previous post. Rehabilitation is what the judge ordered to avoid him going to jail. Even though my parents didn't press charges, the justice system can pursue criminal charges against him, and they have. It's part of the agreement they've reached. Additionally, there's the lawsuit filed by the person who bought the house, who wasn't very happy to find out there was no house, and that my brother had taken part of the money. He had only paid part of the house. Although part of me thinks the buyer was a fool for paying it all, surely thinking it was a bargain, I also think the lawsuit against my brother is well-deserved. The outcome is that they've reached a settlement, and my parents are paying for that. They could have let my brother take care of all his problems, but no. They have to be there for him, paying for his mistakes, when they're neither directly responsible nor obligated to cover the costs of his mess. But from what they've said to other family members, they can't leave their son at his lowest point. I wish karma would hit them harder, so hard that it would bring them back to reality. But seeing my parents' attitude, I don't think even a high-speed train crashing straight into their faces would wake them from their fantasy world, one where my brother deserves all the effort they put into him. Update 7. My parents have had to sell the house, and my brother is probably back using. It's been months, and everything was quiet. That's why I hadn't updated, even though I've received many requests to do so. My brother had left rehab, and as far as I knew indirectly, everything was normal. However, a couple of months ago, my parents returned to the house and discovered they had been robbed. Several valuable things were taken. It's not hard to imagine who could have done something like that, and he wasn't alone. My parents discovered my brother and a couple of his friends loading a car with their things, thanks to a neighbor's cameras. And no, they haven't filed a police report about this. They've been telling family members that with everything that's happened lately, they can't send him to jail, because if anyone reports him, he could spend a long time in prison, as it wouldn't be his first offense. Even our relatives have told them they should report it no matter what, but my parents refuse. They've told them it shouldn't even be about the stolen items, but because he would use everything he stole to start using again. But my parents insist on not reporting it and want to find him to bring him back home. So my brother has left them with debts and a looted house, forcing them to sell it and move to a smaller place. I don't know the place, but I can't imagine anything smaller than the house from my childhood. We never had much, so our house was always modest. Something interesting for you all is that the buyer is the same person my brother tried to scam. He made an offer to my parents, the only one they received, and since this would help them pay the debt with him, in addition to needing quick money for the bills, they decided to take it. But these are the things that have been happening with my parents. I know this update is a bit bitter in some aspects, and maybe what I have to say isn't related, but it makes me happy, and I don't want to make another update just to say I'm pregnant. You don't know how happy it makes me, especially after everything we've been through lately. Update 8. My parents have sold again and moved out of the city because my brother has been sentenced to 15 years in prison. My parents were searching for my brother, even paying for a private investigator, but it was hard to find him. Finally, he was arrested for armed robbery, a weapon he used to shoot the person he stole from in the leg. Fortunately, that person didn't die, because although I don't know them, they don't deserve to carry the consequences of my brother's mistakes. My parents have sold their last house and moved closer to where my brother will serve his sentence. Honestly, that's a relief for me, because with a newborn baby, I'm not going to lie, it's better for everyone that they are far away. My parents have told family members they are moving because here, they don't see a good future anyway and want to be close to my brother. It's as if they expect him to come out reformed in 15 years, but I won't be the one to destroy their illusions. Maybe they'll learn during this time, or maybe when it's too late.